Hi there, how's it going? It's Victor Count, and this is Biblical Wisdom for Flourishing. And today on week three, as we think about what flourishing might look like this month of May, we'll be covering, looking at community relationship. That's a hallmark of flourishing. Of course, for most of you that are familiar with the research or work around some of my conversations around human flourishing, or even their abundant life, community or relationship is at the heart of that. And so today we want to talk about what it means to build an authentic community. And the text from which we'll draw our insight from today would be from the book of Hebrews, Hebrews 10, verse 24 to 25. And it says, let us consider how we spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting one together, but actually encouraging one another. Let me get the passage in the Bible just to read it well, because I feel like I'm stopping it up, reading from my head. Let's see, Hebrews. I remember those days that we would have, when I was little, and in the church would always have competition around who will first find a scripture in the Bible and read it out in the church, which I think, it's one of those values that we lost in our culture today, which I think it's usually very good. So Hebrews 10, verse 24 to 25, and it says, and let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exalting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. Another version of the Bible tells us to consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, but encouraging one another. The core idea from this text is that you were never meant to flourish alone. In fact, from beginning of time, God said that it is not good for a man to be alone. Now, the word man used in this text also refers to both male and female, not just the male child. Flourishing in itself, as we know, happens in community. But ultimately, authentic community doesn't just happen by accident. It takes intention. It takes being vulnerable. It takes investing in the community in order to build authenticity within that community. And I think there are three things or three components of an authentic community that we should pay attention to, especially if we are thinking about building an authentic community. One is an authentic community is consistent. Authentic communities are consistent. In fact, the early church in Acts chapter 2 tells us that they met alone, that the brethren met alone. In fact, community is formed in regular checkups, regular connection, not just occasional check-ins. And so the big question would be, are you showing up in your community even when it's inconvenient, right? But the second ingredient is that an authentic community, it's an encouraging community. Encouragement is at the heart of authentic communities. Real communities, they lift each other up. They don't shame each other. They don't think about how to pull the other person down. And I think there is sort of a cause, sadly, that I see a lot in communities, whether it's institutions, whether it is congregations. And as a leader, as a pastor, the pastor congregation, but also even that worked in a university setting. And I see where there's a breakdown in communities. And it's as a result of people having their own tribes or people they know, and they have a circle. And when someone new comes in, it's very difficult to break into that circle because they've been friends for a long time. They grew up together. And even if in the church context, for example, you have a new member come to the church, it's difficult to break into that circle because those 4, 5, 6 women or men, they know each other, they're good friends, they speak the same language. And so it's difficult to break in. But real communities encourage each other, right? And part of that encouragement could even mean finding ways to have what is known as listening IQ, paying attention to the other person is saying. A real community calls us higher. The goal is not to make us feel better. It's about identifying the needs of one another, but also encouraging one another in that process. One of the persons in the Bible that, demonstrates this by his life example would be Barnabas, whose name meant the son of encouragement. He actually sought out Apostle Paul, who then was Saul, when no one trusted Apostle Paul. Of course, it made sense because Apostle Paul was just converted. He just converted to Christianity. He converted to faith, and of course, there was a lot of reservations by most of the other apostles and disciples who were not sure whether or not this brother actually was coming into their circle for genuine reasons, or maybe he's coming in to entrap them, get them arrested, or maybe somehow do something that would implicate them. But Barnabas saw potential in Paul, right? He saw potential where others saw threat. And so sometimes I think, again, talking about having tribes or circles within community, usually the reason why a particular circle or tribe in a community, when I say tribe, I don't mean by ethnicity, I mean people that are kind of close-knit. They have circles, and the reason why another person can break into that group is because they see the other person maybe as a threat, maybe not, right? But Barnabas, he saw potential in Paul. The other key aspect of an authentic community is there's a sense of shared purpose. By the early church, they shared meals together, they shared their possessions together, they shared their prayers together, they shared their mission together. They had a sense of mission, right? And that unity created a witness that the world could not ignore in itself. In fact, a number of research in psychology, psychological research even shows that communal bonds, right, that is rooted in shared values can actually produce higher emotional resilience, higher levels of well-being because of that bonds, the communal bonds. In my work on spiritual ties to place, I talk about this particular aspect of communal bond that we see in places where we have a sense of connection to. In fact, even in environmental psychology, place attachment is one of the topics that's often talked about. And in place attachment, essentially, most people have that positive emotional connection to place because of the people in place, because of the bond that they have with the people within that space. And so an authentic community has a shared sense of purpose. It's an encouraging community as well. But also there's consistency. And so as I end this devotional this morning, I want to ask, are you known by anyone in your spiritual community? Maybe that's where we should start. Are you the type that shows up in your church and no one knows your name, and after church you just go home? I used to do that sometimes, and there were reasons why I was doing that. One was I knew that as soon as people might know who I am, that maybe that also means I'll get a bit more involved, if that makes sense. And I needed at a time, but wherever I find myself, I always want to serve anyway. And so, are you known by anyone in your spiritual community? And if you're not known by anyone in your spiritual community, is there a reason why that's the case? And what is the intentional step that you can take this week? Maybe to encourage or maybe to support someone else in your circle to be part of a community. Flourishing does not happen alone. Find your community. There's a biblical wisdom for flourishing. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye for now.